And we are back with another episode of George in the Jungle, presented by Remington Tavern. Remington Tavern can be found at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have daily happy hours from 3 to 7 p.m. $5 Woodford Wednesdays. That's tomorrow. And they can be found on Instagram at Remy Tav Cincy, REMITAVCINCY on Instagram. And you can follow them on Facebook as well. With that said, George.
Hey,
this is
how you doing?
3 weeks. 3 weeks in a row. We're doing.
By the way, I guess.
Merry Christmas to you as well.
I wore this to the game tonight.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, it's not my Grinch outfit that I had on last year.
Oh, there's something to be said for that, I suppose.
Yes, I'll wear that to Remington Tavern for the bottle cap bingo on Thursday.
Well, you were at the game tonight. The Bearcats win, which they didn't do on Saturday, which we will get to. But Cincinnati beats Merrimack in a final of 65-49. I caught the points at 19.5. Did not cover the spread. Unfortunately, they had it after the Jizzle James dunk, and then there was a turnover, and they let points go. And
they gave up 5 down the stretch. They probably shouldn't have.
Probably not. That said, this coming on the heels of a loss to the Dayton Flyers at the Heritage Bank Arena. Were you there for that one?
No, I wasn't allowed to go. I had a medical procedure on Friday. I wasn't allowed to walk up a whole bunch of steps, but I'm fine now. But I'm glad I missed it because I don't know. I got a good idea who would have been sitting around me, but I punched enough stuff at home. I didn't need to get arrested at Heritage Bank Arena punching people or punching chairs or concession stands what a disaster that was. I'm sorry. On the heels of that Xavier game where you could maybe rationalize some things in that loss, you couldn't do it on Saturday night. That was a putrid anti-Bearcat performance on defense. Offensively, I was glad tonight to see Locken not hanging out at the three-point line. How that dude fires 5 threes in a game against a legit team, a team that's got a very good chance to make the NCAA tournament. That dude's got to live on the block. I'm sorry. I don't even know how a coaching staff sits there and watches that happen and doesn't do a damn thing about it. So I'm sorry. I'm usually a positive guy and I'm optimistic.
You are.
That was just that was disgusting. It was disgusting. And the defensive performance was disgusting. And not the fact that you give up those open threes and all the fouls, for God's sakes. And I know Wes talked about it after the game and getting your chest on the ball and in front. Well, then let's do it. Figure it out. And I think part of the problem is too many guys are getting too many damn minutes. Figure out the rotation. I mean, I kind of like, after I calm down, pull out to the satellite view of the whole situation. And this is oversimplifying, but you got to find the guys who are playing well in that game, who are the matchups that are good in that game, that are just have it going on in that game. They got to get the minutes. You don't just spread the minutes around to spread the minutes around. You got to find the guys that are playing and play them in that game. And, because tonight Aziz and CJ were out
right,
with injuries, they tightened it up a little bit, and it was a little better. I still had issues with some of it, but I just think that it's got to be tightened up a little bit on who gets all the minutes. And for God's sakes, do not let Vic be shooting a bunch of threes.
18 turnovers tonight by your Cincinnati
Yeah, that's
Bearcats.
terrible against Merrimack. Terrible.
Horrible, horrendous. I also believe I know that there's been some mentions of this on different shows that we do here in the comments, but I don't know that it's been necessarily discussed at length. But I think that this team is lob happy. I think that Terry brought it up on the broadcast that when you're throwing as many lobs as Cincinnati is, you start to look like an AAU team. And sure, you get caught up in the excitement of making the 5 or so that you make, but at the same time, you're missing, somewhere in that 7 to 10 range, and that's missed opportunities on points because those generally end up in turnovers. That you usually aren't getting those rebounds. So that's at the very least 2 points that you've just given the other team.
Yeah, you're throwing possessions away, and
Sure.
quite honestly, even though Bandego wasn't playing tonight, they did it again tonight several times.
With Jameel, there was one even from Day to Jizzle that luckily they recovered and ended up making a 3 out of that. But it's
the Harlem Globetrotters.
I enjoy the pace. I really do. I enjoy dunks. They're my favorite, even more so than threes. But let's just take the opportunity when it's there. And you can be aggressive, but I think that you're almost falling in love with the lob as much as people fall in love with the 3, and it's very strange.
Yes, and that's a big part of what bit them on Saturday night were both of those things. The defense mainly, but I mean, all those threes on Saturday. Look, you're going to have off nights shooting the 3, but what you got to do, back to my earlier point, is find the guys who maybe have it that night. And I talked to a guy who's much wiser than me about this a long time ago, and he brought up, I thought he was crazy, but the older I get, the more I think it makes more sense. And this is crazy. People are going to think I'm drunk. I'm not yet, but I'm about to get there. The more I think the biorhythms. Everybody has these supposed biorhythms. Some days they're up, some days you're down. And this guy was talking to me, this coach, that he wanted to figure out which guys had the biorhythms at the top edge. Those are the guys that will play on that night. And the guys that are bottoming out, they'll stay on the bench for the majority of the minutes. And if you could do that, if there was a way to scientifically do that, it'd be a lot easier. But I look at this team and I almost feel like at 4 p.m. on a game day, they need to have like a 45-minute scrimmage and see who the hell's performing that day, who's not, and those guys get the minutes when the lights come on. Because I just feel like this, everybody playing and nobody, the guys who are in a rhythm don't stay in a rhythm because they're back on the bench. And I think he needs to shorten the rotations as he gets closer to conference play, and maybe he will. I mean, I remember back in the day, a lot of teams, and Bob Knight's teams were notorious for having bad losses or looking clunky until conference play started, and they would get better and better and better. And by the end of the season and tournament time, they were a force to be reckoned with. I would love to think that that's kind of what's going on here. But when you look at this schedule and the non-conference part of it, there's a couple of games you got to circle and say, these are the games that are important. And I've had arguments with people. They say I'm crazy. I don't think I am. I think those games should be prioritized, and you should game plan for those games. You're going to beat the Merrimacks of the world if you have 18 turnovers.
You should.
Right. They had 18 turnovers and won by 16, right? You're going to beat these other teams they've played. You're not going to beat Dayton doing that. You're not going to beat Xavier doing that. You've got to be at your best. I just don't feel like they were even close to their best. But if they were, they're in a big bunch of trouble come Big 12 time. I just think there's a way to find who's performing on that night and give them the minutes. And I could be crazy. Every coach in the world may say I'm nuts, but I go back to this guy talking about figuring out the players' biorhythms and who's having a good day, because we all have good days. We all have bad days. I have many a bad days, and I know when I'm having a bad day. Some days you just don't have it. And I just feel like there's a way to and maybe I'm crazy, but there's a way to narrow that down and figure it out. And when you got a guy out there and he gives you a really good shift, leave him in there. If he needs a rest, pull him out for a minute, get his butt back in there.
Well, to your point, Dan Skilling saw, I believe this might be the fewest minutes he's had in a game this season, down to 15 minutes today.
Yep, I did see that.
Interesting note there. Jamil, though, on the other hand, in his second game as a Bearcat, up to 14 minutes.
He had some really good minutes tonight, too. He had a couple bad ones, and that happened, and he had some decisions that were shaky. But I'll tell you what, for a big dude, his hustle, and
he can move.
And he's not afraid to put a shoulder in someone. He's not afraid to do anything. He impressed me tonight.
It was fun seeing him in the jump man blocks. But he led all rebounders with 11. He was a rebounding machine. Vic leads all scorers with 18, 8 of 14 from the floor there. No threes for Vic today, to your point as well. Right? Not a single one.
Right.
Not a single
and
one. And the Bearcats
inside on the block. It's not that hard.
The Bearcats only shot 5 of 12 from behind the arc today. A lot of stuff inside.
And they need to do that. And look, they may not be able to do it in the Big 12. I don't know. But against these other teams I talked about, they should have been able to do it. And instead, I got to get over that. I've got to get over Xavier, and I got to get over Dayton.
One last note on Dayton.
You mentioned Skilling's minutes tonight. You've seen how he's been playing recently. What happened to him? Because I know they were playing cupcakes, but he looked pretty darn good. He had nice drives, had nice shots. I thought he made pretty darn good decisions for the most part. He got out of control. He does from time to time, and I know he's fairly new to the game, but he has been awful the last 3 or 4 games.
Yeah,
he looked that good tonight.
He something's looked off with him.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't know what. I hope he finds it. I'm sure he can. He's very. I mean, he moves well.
When he's on. Yeah.
Yeah. He's had some monster games for them this year. I don't know what's going on, but again, back to my point. If he doesn't have it, then put him on the bench and leave the guys in that do have it. You don't have to force minutes. You don't have to. They got his players.
Even his rebounding's been down as he only finishes with 3 rebounds tonight. But
that was a weird rebounding game, though, Aaron, because Merrimack took a lot of shots that weren't inside, close to the other, and they got a bunch of layups early. But a lot of the missed shots were outside shots, long rebounds, things. I was surprised Reynolds got as many boards as he did in his time, because a lot of those rebounds would be over the guy under the basket, and it was kind of the secondary guys getting the boards. It was kind of it was a tough rebounding game for anybody because the balls were going all over the damn place. It wasn't just in the paint.
And Cincinnati ends up winning the rebounding battle by 20. One of these stats, though, that I'm probably most concerned with, 6 of 16 layups.
Yep.
6 of 16.
They did not finish well, and there's a couple guys we know that don't finish well in there that had some point blanks that, it was frustrating. And you've got to finish around the rim, and they had trouble with that. But you know what? Vic finishes around the rim pretty darn good.
He does.
And that's why he needs to be down on that block. And I know there's been arguments back and forth about how good he is. He only plays well against the bad teams. I don't think that, because I saw what happened in the second half of the X game. He was really, really good. And when he's down there, he's really good. And he should have been down there Saturday night at Heritage Bank Center. But, you've got to finish around the rim. And that's, there's a certain amount of toughness that goes into that. And you've got to have that toughness if you're going to play at this level that they're going to be in. Since they began playing basketball at UC, you got to have toughness to finish inside. But going into this conference they're going into, if you don't have it, you're going to get run night in and night out.
Now, as this team they have one more game, I believe, before Stetson
Just
and
on Friday
Evansville.
night.
Two more. You have Stetson on Friday, and then the following Friday, Evansville.
Yeah.
Before you enter the conference play, obviously, you had the late addition of Jameel Reynolds. You had Aziz even as a later addition. Not quite as late as Jameel. He's had a little bit more time to try and get acclimated with the rotations. Simas Lukosius gets hit by a car. He looks like he's back in
it
pretty
does
good
look
form today. He was pretty efficient as he ends up 3 of 4 from the field, all of them threes, 2 of 2 from the line. He played the most minutes of anybody on the floor.
He didn't force anything. How many turnovers did he have?
He had 3.
Okay.
But I'm just curious with the way that this team has kind of unfolded between those 3, especially with the 2 additions, and then with Simas missing. I think Chad said it's been something like either an entire or part of 4 games, just with the coming back from the car accident. What identity does this team have right now? Do you think it has one? Do they have? Do you think that they've established a leader at this point? Because that's something we were kind of talking about last night on the BBP.
No, I could not tell you the identity. I know the identity the coach says he wants, and that's a defensive one, but that hasn't come
That hasn't shown its head. No.
Now, tonight was better, but you're playing Merrimack. You're much bigger. You're much more talented. You ought to be able to hold them. I shouldn't say under 50 because that's kind of jarring when you don't score 50 points. The way UC now gets it up and down the floor. 5 years ago, there were several games that you could hold people under 50 because possessions are going the entire length of the shot clock. But now, no, that's good against anyone. But no, I don't have a clear picture of what they are. And there were times tonight they went to zone, probably I would love to have heard why Coach Miller said they did switch to that. It was like some weird 1-3-1 thing they did for a little bit, and it maybe just to throw Merrimack out of their rhythm, and it appeared to work when they did it. But it's not a defensive identity. It's not. To me, it's if you had to say what the identity is, it's helter skelter. I don't know what the hell it is. It's like a bunch of guys coming in and out, and some guys throwing threes up one game, some guys throwing it up the next. I'm really being harsh here. I did like the fact Vic was down low most of the time.
I agree.
When you got a zone going, get the ball to the middle. They started doing that better and better as they got a little more used to it. But these things seem basic to me. These seem like things you ought to be able to do on November 1st, not December, whatever it is.
I get where you're coming from as far as the Vic thing goes, because I think that the fact that he can make the 3 is a bonus, but I don't think that needs to be what he's out on the court to do.
If he's getting his butt kicked down low all the time, and he can pop out and do that and maybe help extend that defense a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. But there shouldn't be a game where it worked. And, I hear all this stuff about how he makes them in practice and all that. That's fine and good. But until that translates into game time, that should not be part of his playbook, game in and game out.
I don't think he should be missing 3 a game ever. You shouldn't be taking that many. If you're missing 3, you've taken too many threes.
I agree. When you're a 7-footer with his inside offensive game, I mean, my God, I hate to be an old man, but I am. Like, did Wilt Chamberlain play outside the paint? Did Shaq play outside the paint? Any of those guys, did anyone say, I got an idea? You're a good shooter. Now, Vic's a better shooter than those guys were from outside. But you get my point. You got to have a freaking guy in there that's down on the block and that's where he operates, and he's got a great touchdown there. I mean, how many times have we seen, and he did it a couple times tonight, he throws up the little baby hook, and it bounces a couple times, and it comes in through the net, and it's a bucket. He's got a nice touchdown there. That's a great weapon. Maximize it.
The only time I think I'd be okay with that is with him living outside the arc is when you have a Jameel or an Odie on the block instead of him. But if he's the guy, because you can't have both of them down on the block. But
even then, the threes have to be sparing,
contained.
You know what? They have much better options in game time that I've seen. I don't see practice, but during games, I think Lukosius and CJ, and for God's sakes, there's probably three more that are a better option than what I've seen.
Jizzle, Day.
Yeah. Right. Correct.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if we have seen some more of the Jizzle and Day. I thought they played better today than they played against Dayton.
Yeah, together. And I know I talked about that last week a little bit, and I do like to see it. And I will say this: I love this when West put them in together, because Merrimack, for all their faults, they had two really quick guards. Like this one dude, I think it was number 0, and he looked like he was 5'8". This dude was
Adam Clark.
He had fast feet, fast hands. He was fun to watch. Could he play at UC's level? Probably not. But he was a bit of a problem he was quick. He gave him problems early in the game. I think Day was a little surprised by how quick he was, because he took him down a couple times, blew by him. And I know he made one layup, if not another, or passed off for an easy bucket. But, it was good to see him go in and kind of match up with those two quick guards, if nothing else, for defensive purposes.
Sure. Like I said, it'll be interesting to see what they do in those last two games as they're trying to figure out the best rotations that they have going into conference play. And we'll also be able to see if the injuries to whatever's going on with Aziz Bondego and CJ Frederick.
It doesn't sound major. It sounds like more like, okay, we can get by this,
precautionary.
Anything, and nor should they. I mean, the conference is coming up. I don't want to. I mean, Merrimack played fairly well tonight, even though they only scored 49. But I was about to say, me, you, and 3 other guys could go out there, and that's not fair to Merrimack. We couldn't compete with them. But I think West did the right thing. You can get by this game. Stetson beat Central Florida, which is interesting, which may say a lot about Central Florida. I'm not sure. But, man, when that Big 12 schedule starts, everybody's got to be healthy and ready to go, because you don't start that thing with there's no cupcakes anyway. There's no softies. There's no layups. But when you start with BYU and Texas, that's going to be interesting, because BYU may be one of the best teams in the country that gets not a lot of love.
Yeah, I think they're 18 in the country right now, or something along that line.
Yeah, they've had to earn their respect, and they've got it by me.
Well, we'll certainly get to see them up close and personal as that game.
As it shakes out, when I first saw the schedule, it's like, okay, that's a good game to start with. Now I'm not so sure.
Yeah, you're about 2.5 weeks away from that one, as that one is on January 6th. But in the meantime, we will switch gears here. Cincinnati Bengals are back in the win column once again, as they take out Ivan Pace and his Minnesota Vikings. Ivan Pace had an opportunity to stuff Joe Mixon at the goal line, and while he did hit him, it wasn't enough to stop him from scoring. And apparently he had some words for Joe Mixon after the game, as there was a video.
What was that all about? I saw the video.
You can kind of hear the audio, and if you want to go back and listen to it, that's on you. I'm not going to go into what I think I heard, but it didn't sound great coming from. It sounded. I mean, I guess I can say what I thought I heard. It just sounded like Ivan was just threatening to beat him up while still wearing his helmet, which Joe was not wearing his helmet, and it sounded like sounded like Joe Mixon just continued to say, "Bro, you lost.
Right.
Game's over," and just weird. In any case,
I love Ivan, and I love the way he plays, and I love his goofy character and all that. But Joe Mixon is running angry this year.
He is.
And he was so angry on that touchdown run. That was a man's touchdown. That's funny that you put that right here at the top because that's somewhere on my list of things. That was a man's touchdown. And Joe Mixon's had a few of those. God almighty. I love the way that dude's running right now. And, when he got hit, it looked like, oh, my God, he is not going to get in. And he was not going to be denied. That was I'll tell you, I wasn't so sure the Bengals should re-up the way they did with Mixon and bring him back and all that, but I'm glad they did. He has proven it this year. I don't know how many years he has left, but this has been, I know yardage-wise and all that and yards from scrimmage, it's not his best year. But to me, when it comes to those short yardage, just impact plays, this is the best he's been.
Well, he did end up with 10 carries, 47 yards, an average of 4.7. Easy math on that one with that touchdown. He only had 3 catches for 14, but just anytime he's touching the ball right now, you feel like it's going to be a first down.
3 catches is more than he had in a 5-game span sometimes before this season.
Now, Jake Browning it did take overtime in this one. Jake Browning goes 29 of 42 for another game over 300 yards with 324, 2 touchdowns. He did have a pick. It was a bad pick as well.
Oh God, yeah, I am sure as soon as he threw it, he's like, "What did I just do?"
But this one, there were some casualties as you lose DJ Reader for the year. That's brutal. That's a brutal injury loss.
It is. It is, and they tried to
put a waiver claim in today. The Houston Texans beat them for a defensive tackle on a waiver claim today, but he's a run stuffer. He is a.
And they gave up 143 against the Vikings. Like Chandler ran, he was right. We'll talk about the overtime 4th down stuff with the Vikings. But, the Bengals' run defense has already suffered, even with DJ in there, and he makes all the difference. And I give the Bengals credit in overtime and what happened. But I will tell you this. I'll just lay it out there now. That Vikings coach in overtime, did he just lose his mind on that 3rd and 1 with the tush push with like a 5'9", 145-pound wide receiver? I don't know what he's probably 180. But, I mean, really, if that's what you're going to do, that's the dude you have behind the quarterback. And let's think about this. So it's 3rd and about a yard. It may have been a tad more. Okay, you're thinking maybe we do it twice and we get it. If I've got Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, and I got a 3rd and 1 in overtime.
And Ty Chandler, he was really good
in the backfield. You know what this old goat's doing?
Anything else?
Play action all day long, and one of those guys is going out, and I'm ending this damn game right here and now. I'm not bunking up like that crap and announcing to the Bengals defense in the world, this is what I'm doing. No, I'm like, we're going to have some options here, and it's going to be play action, and I would have torched them. Now, maybe it wouldn't work. All right, so now you got 4th down, and now you can use Ty Chandler there to get 1 yard. This guy puts his quarterback with a 180-pound guy behind him to push, and everybody's pinched in. It's not like there's an option here. I just thought if I were backup quarterback Vikings, and I know that dude's done an okay job, I would have wanted to fire the dude. That was malpractice. And thank God, kudos to the Bengals for stopping it. That was huge. But that was so dumb.
It's your third string quarterback as well. So I don't know what the hell they were thinking.
I couldn't believe when they bunched up like that on third down. I'm like, there is no way they're doing this. They're not. Something's up. Oh no, they did it. But and I was happy. But I'm like, oh my God. I don't have words for it. Again, that goes back to my previous point. When guys are having games, you got to ride them. You don't change it at the most critical point of the game. You ride the stud.
The Cincinnati Bengals did just that as T. Higgins had the go-go gadget arm for the touchdown. That was an unreal touchdown.
It was amazing. And that's what I was texting with friends of mine, and that's where you appreciate what kind of athletes these guys are, and the body control, the coordination, the toughness, everything. That was unbelievable what he did. The catch to have the sense to stretch that ball out over the goal line and the pylon. It was and hang on to it. I mean, just that was amazing. And I am so happy for T. Higgins, and I don't know what's going to go on there, but that was the most awesome touchdown catch of the year for sure, and one of the all-timers. If the Bengals make the playoffs, that was a season-saving catch right there by T. Higgins, and we haven't even gotten to Jake Browning yet, but what he did as well from the fourth quarter on. You go into that fourth quarter, they were down 14. What the hell was it? 17-3. They hadn't done anything, and there were so many great moments in that fourth quarter and overtime for the Bengals that Jake Browning's probably making himself some money here, even though the Bengals can control him for another 2 years, basically, if or at least certainly through next year and the year after, he can be restricted. But my God, if you're the Minnesota Vikings and you've got what's going on there, I don't know what Kirk Cousins has left, but put Jake Browning on that team.
He already was on that team, and they cut him.
Yes, exactly why he said you shouldn't have something cut me. Imagine if they had this dude, and he's got Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, and a fair running game, and a defense that allowed the Bengals 3 points in the first 3 quarters. And look, God bless the Bengals. They wore them down, and I love the way Jake Browning and the Bengals offense, they stick with it. They make adjustments. They figure things out, and they figured it out in the fourth quarter and came back and got it done. But, yeah, imagine him on that team.
No thanks.
The way he is now, that's a potential Super Bowl team.
No, thank you. I would not like to do that. And I don't know how much of the effect of what the play calling has been is the fact that Joe Burrow has been involved in the play calling. Zach Taylor was talking about how Joe's been on the headset and has been involved in some of the play calling, and he said he doesn't want to say too much. And Zach said, I'll tell you to shut up if I think you're talking too much.
Right.
So that's
a weird thing on that.
Well, I want to point something out first here. Okay. How many people do you think Jake Browning threw the ball to this week?
I would say a number.
11.
Right.
That's more people than I can't remember the last time.
Do they really have 11 guys eligible?
I mean,
that may be everybody that was there on the roster eligible.
You had Jamar Chase, you had T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Tanner Hudson, Chase Brown, Mitchell Wilcox, Irv Smith Jr., Joe Mixon, Charlie Jones, Andre Iosivas, Travion Williams, all of them with at least one catch.
Man, that's all the tight ends, all the running backs.
Nope, you missed Drew Sample. Drew Sample did have a target. He missed the one target he had.
He should have caught it. Then I
probably should have. Then it would have been 12. But
I would have been right. But here's where I wonder, And I think Joe has so much confidence. He's not going to check down to a running back like Browning does.
Sure.
Although a lot of that is and I give Zach Taylor credit for this because a lot of that is comfort zone for the quarterback. A lot of it is it's a little easier to make that throw when they're turning it loose. I don't know that Joe would say, yeah, let's go to the screen. Because I haven't done that a lot with him. Am I crazy?
No, I just wonder what if the playbook changed, if the playbook shrank. I don't know what the difference. It's clearly a different offense with Jake Browning at the helm than with Joe.
I don't know if it shrunk, but it changed, and they've allowed for more of this. Some people call it dumping off to the backs. I love it. I think it's always worked. I think it worked for the Bengals. I mean, it worked great in the West Coast offense and the things that did when Kenny Anderson ran that. And if you have lethal running backs that are good receivers, it's a disservice that you don't use that because it gives the defense a whole nother deal to think about when they're pinning their ears back. And I love what I'm seeing. But I don't know what Joe thinks about that. And I wonder if they'll keep using that next year when he comes back. It's going to be interesting because I can't complain about the offense that they ran when Joe was in, right? Because they get chunks left and right.
Sure.
I just think when things aren't quite going so well, that would be a nice little parachute for him to get things started. And maybe that's what goes on. I don't know, but all I know is there's going to be a lot of teams wishing they could get their hands on Jake Browning. And I wonder, I mean, there's got to be some trade offers coming in after this season for this guy because he is looking like a guy that he's not a manager of the game, but he is a guy. He did have the awful interception, but he's a guy that can win you games at that position, and that is the premier position. And there's a lot of teams salivating for a good quarterback.
Going back to the screens and the dump offs, if you will, I think that it ends up opening up the deep game, as you saw T. Higgins with that stretch touchdown is because it opened up the deep game. If he had hit Charlie Jones on that deep pass, that would have been just missed it by what? It hit his fingertips.
Yeah,
I mean, you missed it by a foot or two. So I think that you potentially have something if maybe this allows Joe Burrow to take a step back unwillingly, but it allows him to take a step back and look at what he could potentially be doing if he does start to do some of these things. Now that you've seen a Chase Brown emerge as the guy that you can get some of these screens to, maybe he didn't realize that Joe Mixon was running so angrily this year by being part of the offense as opposed to watching it from the sidelines, watching it the way that we're all watching it. So I'm just curious to see if maybe Joe Burrow evolves by watching what Jake Browning was doing and learn something from Jake Browning, which is a crazy statement to even say.
Yeah,
but here we are.
Before we saw this stretch, it would be, but to me now, I get where you're coming from there, and that is an interesting thought, and I wouldn't discount it. I mean, we all think we know everything sometimes, but we don't. And it's kind of a good little wake-up call sometimes when you realize, yeah, that way of doing it. And I was so guilty of that so much at work. God, I'm embarrassed sometimes. I thought I knew everything. And then I would see something, I'd be like, God, how did I not know that or think of it that way? I was probably not the best employee sometimes because I thought I knew everything. And you never know everything. I mean, as old as my ass is now, I don't know 40% of nothing, basically. And that's, hopefully Joe looks at it that way, and that's not a knock on him. It's just everything else he has been doing has worked so well.
Right.
It's like you keep doing it, but when things aren't going so well and you keep beating your head against the wall, maybe you don't have to. Maybe there's some options there to take the heat off.
Now, Jamar Chase did separate his shoulder. He's going to miss at least one game, as was announced, I believe, last night.
Well, yeah, that was a Ian Rappaport report, which usually spot on, but Zach Taylor said he's not throwing in the towel. It's day to day, but Jamar was not on the practice field today. So I would say it's trending that way, and that's not good.
No.
You need every weapon when you're going to Pittsburgh. But my guess is, yes, he'll probably miss this game.
But also important in this game against Minnesota, you had T. Higgins take a huge step forward as he had 2 touchdowns. You also almost had a Tyler Boyd redemption game as he had a giant catch to even get into scoring position. And so this offense is really coming together. I thought the game was over at halftime. I was not feeling great at halftime, and I'm like, well, all right. And all of a sudden,
it was
they were.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up Tyler Boyd because obviously I'm a big fan of his. But that play, it's funny because he was kind of the invisible man most of the game.
Most of the season, except for the drops.
But he still ends up when push comes to shove and you got to have a play or you got to have a first down, he's still doing it, and he did it. That play was basically kind of over, and he's running across the field, and then he's like, it's not over. And he takes off and gets himself wide open, takes it, turns it up the field, looking like a rookie, and takes off. That was a tremendous play by him. And that's a guy who just, I know there's been drops. I know there's been up, but he does not stop. He does not stop. He, in my book, is a winner. He's a guy, and he went through the god-awful first couple of years with Zach and everything that was going on and stayed the course in the locker room and said, this is going to work. I thought he was crazy. He's going, no, I believe in this, and this stuff's good stuff, and we're going to turn this around, and we're going to go to the Super Bowl. And I'm like, man, I love young guys who are so optimistic and really believe this crap. It happened. He not just believed it, he made it happen. And a lot of it was his will to win, his will to keep playing. I'm obviously, I've said it enough. I'm a big fan of his. And I was pumped that he made that play. I thought that was tremendous. And, then you go to T. Higgins doing what he did. You do the tight ends doing what they did. I mean, we thought the season was over when Joe Burrow got injured.
Yeah.
It's not. They beat the Vikes. Now they got a tough game coming up at Pittsburgh.
Yep.
And then you got what? You got a game at Kansas City.
Yep.
Then you got the Browns.
But Cincinnati no longer in the basement of the conference somehow, even though they have not won a game in the division, no longer in the basement of the division, rather. But they are at 8-6, facing a 7-7 Pittsburgh team with their backs against the wall. I don't know when the last time was that the Steelers did not make the playoffs with Mike Tomlin, so I'm not feeling great about this game, especially missing Jamar Chase, missing DJ Reader. Although Pittsburgh, I believe, lost one of their defensive backs for the season as well for his, unless he somehow gets on the field, I'm assuming he's going to
Fitzpatrick's
challenge
out, KZ's out. Yeah, I don't
KZ.
think Challenge gets hurt till next week. So he's going to miss this game. So they're missing their starting safeties. They're hurting too.
That's tough.
You still got TJ Watt, and they're going to bring some heat. I guarantee it.
Is Kenny Pickett back?
He could be. They say they think Mason Rudolph is going to start over Trubisky, Rudolph allegedly getting all the snaps with the starters, but Pickett could figure his way back. Why'd my camera just go all blurry?
I don't know what you did.
I don't either. Did I spit on it? I don't know what that's all about.
There you go.
I didn't spit on it. But the Steelers are going to do what everybody does and look at this Bengals run defense, and especially now with DJ Reader out.
Mm-hmm.
I could be crazy. I'm not sure how good I didn't look. I should have looked at their rushing offense, but it's kind of it's the other guy. It's not Najee Harris anymore. I mean, he sucks. He can't get it past. If he runs for 4 yards, that's a breakaway run for him this year. I'm not declaring Bengal victory.
Talking about Jaylen Warren.
God, I'm trying to remember the guy's name. He drives me nuts because he sucks up all the carries. I got Harris on a fantasy team.
Jaylen Warren had 10 carries, 40 yards in the last game. Yeah.
Yes, it's him. It's him. You've got to look at the Bengals, and if you got, I don't care if it's Kenny Pickett playing or Mason Rudolph or Mitch Trubisky, the Steelers got to run the ball. And the Bengals defense has absolutely stunk when you look at yards and all that, yards per game, everything. They've stunk. So the Steelers are going to try to run it down their throat. We'll see what happens. I think the Bengals offense could have some success, though. It's going to be an interesting game. It really is. And now this time of year, everybody's got injuries. Everybody's like relying on guys. They were going, before the season, I hope like hell I don't have to rely on this guy. Well, now they got to rely on him. And it's going to be a battle of the backups, if you will, not completely, but in several key positions because, as you said, the Bengals could be without Chase. They're going to be without DJ Reader. They may be a little thin at the cornerback department. We'll see. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be hopefully not the same result, but it could be another ugly offensive effort on both sides like we saw when they played here at Paycor in Browning's first start, which, again, I'm glad Browning has had a chance to see them back when he started. When was it? November 26th or whatever, the Sunday after Thanksgiving. I think that's big for him. I think he got in that game and it didn't go well at all. It looked ugly, and that's when I gave up. I'm like, man, oh man, this is going down the crapper. And I thought Jake Browning looked pretty good in preseason, but again, you're going against backups and all that. Well, he's going against some backups now in Pittsburgh. And he's played a hell of a lot better against starters the last 3 weeks. So I've got confidence. I think it could happen.
With a loss, I believe you knocked the Steelers out of the playoffs.
Even more reason to win.
But it's still, there's plenty of teams around the conference that are sitting at 8-6. So Cincinnati's got plenty of pressure. But if the playoffs ended today, Cincinnati does sneak in with that second wild card spot.
And the Bengals, I think, if I like crazy rules and crazy things like in card games and all that. The Bengals are now, 5-0, something like that against the NFC. They should be invited to the NFC playoffs if they don't make the AFC. They dominated the NFC, right?
Sure. Why not?
Yeah. Just, I like that low in the hole, low card, wild, poker, all that crazy stuff. That'll be the next step for the NFL and the college football playoff.
Unbelievable.
I know that is. I don't know where that came from, but it just amazes me their record in the AFC, and then they're perfect in the NFC. And that's beating the 49ers, by the way, who is everybody's pick to just walk away with the Lombardi trophy now.
Still, yep. You got anything else on the Bengals then, George?
Oh, let's see. I'm sure I could say plenty about the Let's see. The Athletic has the Bengals with a 17.6% chance to make the playoffs. They're still, that's figuring in. The reason for that is that AFC record, if they get in a wild card tiebreaker. And they may, but it depends on which teams you're in with. And if it's somebody they beat head to head. Yeah, but no, I think we got the Bengals pretty well covered.
They're 2.5-point favorites in the game at Pittsburgh, 58%, 58.3. ESPN Analytics is giving them to win the game, and the over-under on that one at 36.5.
I may bet the money line then. And I thought the Bengals would beat the Vikings by a little more. I gave the 3. I got it at 3, so I pushed. But I thought the Bengals the numbers I got, it was better to just take the points or give the points as opposed to the money line. But I will bet them straight up this week. I really will.
All right. Well, we will switch gears one last time. Tomorrow is signing day for the Cincinnati Bearcats, and Chad and Dave will have plenty on that here on the Bearcat Journal YouTube and Twitch channels as they do their BCJ pod. But, George, I wanted to get your thoughts on some of these guys. Last time we talked, we knew that Brendan Sorsby was in. I think that we may have even had I think we had Evan Pryor as well. But since then, there's been a influx of guys here. So right now, there is a long snapper that's not on this list. His name,
Jaden Perry.
There it is. But you have a transfer class right now of Brendan Sorsby at quarterback, Evan Pryor at running back, Micah Coleman, and George Gums as that defensive lineman, and edge. You have Tony Johnson at wide receiver, Ormani Arnold at corner, and Kai Stokes at safety. So you've hit a lot of these spots that I think the Bearcats were looking to fill.
I'm pretty pleased with what they've done. And then when you look at the flip side, we're going to find out how good these guys are at judging talent. But if you look at what they've done with the guys that left the program or were told to leave the program and where they ended up, and then you look at this list that they're bringing in, not only are there guys with not just talent, but certainly some upside. They've got 2 or 3 years left. Only the long snapper, which I'm fine with bringing in a long snapper for 1 year.
Sure.
Those guys are valuable. Do not get I was disappointed UC lost their long snapper. That kid was perfect. But the fact that, Sorsby's got 3 years. Pryor, the running back from Ohio State, has 3 years. Stokes, the safety from Ohio State, has 3 years. Arnold's got 3 years. The cornerback from Idaho. Then the other guys have 2. That's kind of hitting it out of the park in my book. I think they've done very, very well. I think this speaks to kind of the personnel department that they put together to be ready to do this stuff. And we'll see when it comes to wins and losses, and it may not pay major dividends immediately, but we'll see. I mean, picking up Pryor from Ohio State, that's a great little ad in my book, because the Bearcats running back room, with Kiner in there is already okay. Mm-hmm. He's a guy you can depend on, and you put this guy in there, and getting a quarterback with 3 years left who seems to be a sneaky good pick to me. Really, he beat Wisconsin. He's seemed to get better with just a little bit of play. Yeah,
I see what you did there.
I know. But no, that was a big win for Indiana. They sucked until this guy got in there and started making some plays. And to have 3 years left with him, And then, you want to see that wide receiver room beefed up, but I think Henderson's going to stay now. They have Tony Johnson from Florida Atlantic, and I look for some guys to make strides. And I don't want to put pressure on anyone, but I think the kid from Wyoming High School still has a chance to be really good wide. Yes, I thought when he got in games, he played pretty well, made some tough catches, and I just think that guy, he's such a good athlete and displayed really, really good hands. He's got height, length. I just think he could be a weapon. I think there are better days ahead based on what they're doing right now. And when you look at the guys, and there's probably, I don't want to demean anyone, but they ran some people off. A lot of people off.
Most Power 5 programs do.
Right.
Call a spade a spade.
You look where these guys are going, you're like, maybe these guys know a little more than I thought they did. And they should. They're with them every day. They're with them on the practice field. There's a reason that they knew. All right, there's a reason they knew they had a safety that was a problem on the field because of undisciplined plays. But they had to keep playing him because they had nobody else that had a snowball's chance in hell to help them out on defense. And they let that guy, they made that guy walk. And there's a reason for that, because they don't want this undisciplined play. So, I'm not an expert at this stuff. I'm not a recruiting expert. I'm not a judging talent expert in football. But this, given the way they're approaching this and getting guys with more than 1 year, it's not just bring in a grad transfer and pray to God he turns out and helps us. These are guys that can help the program and help build the program. And that I'm all for.
One of the things we saw and that we were both critical of throughout the season, whether here in this space or me in other spaces on this network, the secondary was certainly needed to take a step forward. I think you're going to be able to do that with adding a guy like a Kai Stokes from Ohio State, who showed some flash as a freshman at Ohio State, and he just wasn't going to be able to get on the field as much as he would have liked. So it's not necessarily a knock on his talent. It's just maybe there were people more talented at Ohio State than him. Also, the cornerback room, any guys that you can add in that room, I think is going to continue to drive the level of play in that room. So getting a guy like an Ormani Arnold, it's going to do nothing but continue to build that room.
That needs totally rebuilt. And and you mentioned a guy like Stokes and even a guy like Pryor from Ohio State. As much as we don't want to admit it, there are certain programs that are stacked.
Sure.
1, 2, 3 with players that would start at other Division I programs and good Division I programs. For whatever reason, they don't beat that guy out. Maybe they're not better than them. Maybe they're just a smidge not as good. That doesn't mean they can't get on the field and become as good or better given the opportunity and given the growth, because these are still kids, and I call them kids. I mean, I didn't mature till I was 50. These guys probably are mature human beings and males, but you get a lot of growth, during your early 20s, your late teens. And there's nothing wrong with taking a backup from a blue blood program and giving them the chance. If they're better than what you got, you damn well better go get them. And that looks like that's what they're doing. I'm impressed. I didn't know what was going to happen. It was a horrible season, and we questioned a lot of things. I'll still question this till I see them on the field.
Right.
But on paper, and you never went on paper, but on paper, it seems like they at least had a plan and had targets and didn't just go willy-nilly grabbing anyone that said, "Oh, I'll come to your program." That doesn't, I don't get that sense. I get the sense that they had some targets and they went after their targets. Obviously you're never going to get all of them, but you're going to get the best of the best you can get. And hopefully they did that. But I'm impressed that they got, several of these guys for multiple years.
The defense also struggled to get to the quarterback, and you add 2 defensive linemen, one in George Gomes, an edge, who stands 6'4", 242. He's played multiple positions, including receiver.
That's crazy.
And now here he is as an edge rush, but he stands at 6'4", 242. At least that's what he's listed as. Also, Micah Coleman on that defensive line, 6'5", 253. These look more like, at least they sound like, I haven't seen them standing in pads or anything, but they sound more like the guys built like a Myjai Sanders type as opposed to a Juwan Briggs type. Not a knock on Briggs, but it's just a different style player. And when you struggled to get to the quarterback, something had to change.
Right. And that was one of the, to me, that was one of the shockers of this season, because that interior defensive line is unbelievable. And I thought that might help the edges, no matter how good or not so good they were. And it did not translate. You got to have guys that get there. You got to. And hopefully these guys can. Hopefully they have a few more in the can that they can unleash. But that was a big, big part of the issue. When you got the DBs they had this year and the things that were going on there, and you're not getting to the quarterback, that's a recipe for what we saw.
Disaster.
Yep.
So I'm excited to see what else is in store, as I don't believe they're done yet with only 7 guys in the mix.
No, never done. That's the weird thing. I mean, there will be guys probably added, in the
even after spring ball. Yeah,
correct. When guys go in and figure out, okay, maybe I'm not going to start for Alabama. I want to start somewhere.
Yep.
You got a pound.
We'll find out once classes start. That's when things kind of lock in, at least until after the spring game. So plenty of time for things to shake up still. But again, signing day is tomorrow for the incoming freshman class. There was an offensive lineman who decided to go elsewhere. In Jace Mitchell, he decommitted. So I believe that leaves the class at 21. So again, Chad and Dave will be breaking down everything tomorrow night on the BCJ pod in that regards. FC Cincinnati, still nothing to report. I know it's kind of off season, even though the season doesn't really ever stop for soccer. It feels like they just take breaks whenever they want to take breaks. But I don't think there's much to report there. And unless you have any high school athletic notes.
No, I haven't. I got to get out and see Tyler McKinley play. And I would do it I think they have a game this Friday. But I'm going to go to the Stetson UC game. But I'll see him before the next couple of weeks are up, given what their holiday schedule is. And I didn't look that far in advance. The Reds traded TJ Hopkins. Oh my, they're never going to win. Actually, he showed some promise. That was a guy.
What a weird.
I believe to the Giants for cash or a player to be named later.
Well, was that a waiver claim? Because I thought they cut him.
Like they traded him, but
I thought they DFA'd. I thought I got a note that they DFA'd him, and then all of a sudden I got a note today that they traded him.
Yeah, so. You can't DFA, and then somebody says, "Oh, well, I'll take him. What do you want?"
Sure.
So right. He can go out as a free agent, basically. So that must be what happened. So they obviously felt like they had no use for him. What they need to do is get another first and third baseman. I'm worried about the depth there.
They did sign a
back.
They signed a back.
They need more corner infielders.
They signed a backup catcher. I don't remember. He's a minor league deal or something like that. But
as long as they have Luke Maley, they'll be fine.
I agree. In any case, on behalf of George Vogel, I would like to wish you all a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever holiday it is that you celebrate on your end. Again, be sure to check out our sponsor, Remington Tavern, 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140. They do have those daily happy hours from 3 to 7 p.m. $5 Woodford Wednesdays. Tell them George Vogel sent you. Maybe
The Bengals are on Saturday, right? I may go to Remington and watch that.
You can go drink with your favorite former sports news anchor. That said, that is another episode of George in the Jungle. We will be back at you potentially next Tuesday. I'll talk to George and see what's going on. At the very least, you should have the boys of the BBP on Tuesday, but we'll let you know, of course, on the network. Stay tuned. But we'll catch you next time here on
George whatever you want to do. You let me know, Aaron. I'm good to go whenever.
We'll catch you here on George in the Jungle next time. Thanks for listening.